Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Auto Guide Show brought to you by eBay Motors. This week we have 2 luxury SUVs, 2 all-new EVs, and Lamborghini has a crazy new engine. But first, a word from our sponsor. eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a driveway entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Okay, let's get right into it. So the first story we have here is a SUV that kind of flies under the radar that has been heavily updated this year, and you went out east to drive it.
I did, yeah. So we're talking about the 2024 Lincoln Nautilus, which is no longer a rebadged Ford Edge. Well, I guess it technically is because there's an Edge in other markets, and the Nautilus...
Not the Edge we know, it's a different Edge.
Yeah, different Edge, different Nautilus now. This one is built on the other side of the world. I'll just leave it at that. And it is... Talking about flying under the radar. I drove it, and I didn't really know what to think of it, and I was kind of all up and down about it, but then spending more time getting to drive through 3 of the provinces in the eastern part of Canada in 2 days, I came across liking this more. I don't necessarily think it's better than a Lexus RX because that's a very big target to take down. But I do like that Lincoln has gone for a distinct luxury feel with this. Like it has those 24-way adjustment seats, so you can position it exactly how you want. If you sit slightly, asymmetrical, where one leg is maybe tucked in more, you can accommodate that in the Lincoln. It has massage seats, and they're not just wimpy kind of poking you. It's like a serious massage.
You can adjust your legs for those with sciatic issues.
There you go. See? And then, of course, the big talking point for this one is that it has a 48-inch screen that just stretches from the base of one pillar all the way to the next. And you saw it earlier this year for the preview, but this was my first time with it. And it's good in practice, but the messaging is a little inconsistent. Where Lincoln makes a big deal about how this screen is there so that it keeps people's eyes closer to the road. And I get that, except to change it, you have to look down further at the actual touchscreen, and you have to fling things up to change positions. There's not a whole lot of widgets available yet. Those can come in future updates, so that's fine. But if we're talking about keeping people's attention on the roads, I have to give Lincoln a little bit of guff here, because the only way to adjust the climate control vents is through the touchscreen. You have to click and drag to move them around and point them, and you can't just adjust physically. And so, big problem. But otherwise, it's very smooth and very comfortable and spacious because it's a bigger 2-row. It's just there's a little weird consistencies.
So the way I know it succeeds in what it's set out to do without having ever driven it is I was following along with your social posts during that trip, and you kept talking about how beautiful Eastern Canada is and all these things you saw and landmarks and provinces. And I think that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be a nice, comfortable place for you to just tour around and see things. And it's doing exactly that. I mean, if it didn't, you would be complaining maybe about noise or ride comfort or whatnot, but it's just letting you, take in the sights and enjoy. It's a great road trip car.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think it's nice that it's carving out its own niche.
Good for it. So moving on to a different kind of vehicle altogether. Our freelance contributor, Canal, was somewhere in Europe, and he drove the 2025 Mini Cooper SE. So you drove the Countryman SE. This is now the smaller all-electric Mini, which actually replaces an old all-electric Mini, but of course it's more powerful, better range, everything.
Mm-hmm. And it still looks friendly and happy.
Yeah, it's got that, it's not really a ring. It's kind of like a octagon around its front, but, lets the world know it's slightly different. But he made it sound like it's a lot of fun to drive for an electric Mini. And I mean, we found the old one was fun to drive. It just was a little limited in power and range. So you take care of those two problems, and I have high hopes for this.
Yeah, me too.
And then we move on to another contributor, Lee. He drove the updated Cadillac XT4 Sport. And speaking of big screens, it gets the Cadillac 33-incher this year, which is like the dual screen kind of in one. And he took it on a long road trip and back, and he seemed to like it. Yeah, like it's funny because I drove last year's model on the exact same road trip he did. I took it to Detroit for an event and back, and that's what he did. So like everything he's saying, I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like it's surprisingly powerful for what the numbers and size is. It's quite comfortable. Some of the option packaging isn't great, where you have to like get extra to get some of the safety stuff. There's no Super Cruise on this one, which is unfortunate because that's a Super Cruise highway. Yeah. But the interior seems to have been updated, and I didn't find the old one bad, but it did feel dated. So yeah, I think it's another one that kind of flies under the radar. People don't think of the XT4 for compact luxury, but it probably should be given a look at least.
It's true. And in a weird twist too, I also have a bit of background with this car, because while I didn't drive this, either the pre-facelift or the facelift, I did take a Cadillac last summer to go see the preview event on this same road trip to Detroit. So yeah, I've been looking forward to hearing what it's like, and yeah, like you said and Lee said, like it does fly under the radar, and I would love to see how it competes against something like the X1 that we enjoy so much from BMW.
I was also thinking maybe the UX, or not the UX, sorry, the NX, because that's, I think, sort of the same target it's going after. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then back to you. So you got to not see this in person as much as we can't wait to, but you got to do a virtual presentation of Kia's new small EV, which is sort of what we're all waiting for. I mean, they have great EVs already, but if you're getting into the more affordable space, this could be a big deal.
Yes. Yeah. I don't really know what to make of it yet, because it's so far down the road for North America. Korea will get first crack at it in 2 months. But I really do appreciate that, you know, the styling of EV9 translates so well to a much smaller shape. It looks cool. It, again, like a lot of crossovers, especially small ones, kind of really amplifies that idea of being a crossover, because it's basically a car. It does have the cladding of an SUV, but otherwise it looks like a car in terms of its proportions and its ride height. But it's supposed to be a more affordable EV, right? That's the main goal. It would be one of the very most affordable. It would undercut or sit right around the same price as Niro currently.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, where does this fit in Kia's family? Because you already have the Niro EV and the EV6, both of which aren't exactly big. So is it smaller than those, in between there somewhere?
That's where it comes in as roughly Niro sized, but proportions are very different. And to that end, like Niro, this is a front drive model, even though it's on the same eGMP platform as, well, so many Hyundai Motor Group products already. This is the front drive version, so no rear drive, sadly, because I was really looking forward to that. The idea of this being a small rear drive hatch would be fun, but it's still pretty quick. I mean, there's a 201 horsepower, 201? Yeah, 200, low 200 horsepower, a big battery pack. So, I mean, we got the WLTP estimate, and it's well over 300 miles. I expect it to still be over 300 when it gets here. It should be a lot of what people need out of a small, affordable vehicle. The interior is really nice, full of recycled materials, but very spacious. There is an AI assistant, which in the preview video was a little strange how they showcased it, of, you know, asking the car what I should do for the afternoon, and the car giving the guy advice on what his activities should be. That's a little weird to me.
Why'd you get an evil AI and it's like world domination? Like, oh, yeah. So yeah, basically it sounds like the writing's on the wall for the Niro EV, at least at a minimum, if not the whole model line, because like, why would you have two?
Yeah. And so this fits more in line with their new branding and everything. I think it looks pretty cool. Yeah, very curious to try it. I guess it's going to be a while before it gets here, at least a year. But yeah, sign me up.
I look forward to the day when we get to start driving these new small EV crossovers like this, the Polestar, the Rivian, the R3, I think it is, or whatever the small one is.
Yes, the R3. Yeah. All the little ones are, as someone who lives in a big city, those are what I'm after, not a 9,000 pound EV SUV.
All right. So the last big feature of the week has to do with the Honda Civic getting the one thing the new model is missing. And it was a big glaring sort of gap, and that was the hybrid. But it's actually a bigger deal because it's a better hybrid than it's ever had. It's more powerful than it's ever had. And it's, in a sense, replacing the 1.5 turbo, which at first it's like, oh, because that was such a nice little engine. But this should make more power. And if it is smooth in transition, I think it'll work. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, the initial thought that I had, and I think we talked about this a little bit during the week when this news dropped, is, oh no, I personally love the Civic hatchback with the 1.5 and the manual. I think it's such a great everyday car. But I realize that we're the weird exceptions who care about a manual transmission daily driver. With the Civic Touring, like the one that you had recently for review, that's the 1.5 turbo, but it's a CVT otherwise. And so going with an eCVT, most people are going to be fine. They're not going to know about the difference. And the hybrid powertrain, which is also in the Accord, is really smooth and very torquey and great for daily use, probably better than the 1.5. And so you're ending up with a car that's way better on gas, probably better to live with on a daily basis. It's going to be a little heavier, maybe like 100 pounds or so. But otherwise, I don't like this makes a lot of sense. And it also just fits in line with Honda's current approach of keeping its higher trims as hybrid only. It's a great way to force, but not really force, hybrid adoption.
And if you want that 1.5T with the manual, there's the Civic Si, and the 1.5T is another model, so it's not gone yet. But
yeah, no, this seems great. I hope pricing stays reasonably under control, because that is the one weakness for the Civic.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to go get an update on my Genesis. I know last week I kept saying it was about tires, then I pulled a switcheroo and talked about the exhaust. So this week I promise it is the tires. We'll be back in a minute. eBay Motors is here for the ride. With the parts you need at the prices you want, and with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, they're guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Time for another Project Genesis Coupe update. Last week you got a little preview of what this week's about, and that is tires. With my new 19-inch wheels, I need new 19-inch tires, but more than that, I decided to go wider all around, 30 millimeters in the front and 30 in the rear. So that means my fronts are now 255s instead of 225s, and my rears are now 275s instead of 245s. The tire I chose is the Firestone Indy 500. This is a high-performance tire that's made of great quality, but it's not at a super expensive price. It's pretty affordable, it still gives you good performance. Perfect for a vehicle like mine that's not overly high-end or expensive, but I want still good performance. These tires arrived, and I really like the look. You can see how big each tread block is. They should still be good in the rain, but in the dry, they should be amazing. I'll show you now sort of how they compare to my stock tires before the full installation. So I apologize to those who are listening to this and not watching. If you want to see, go to AutoGuide.com's YouTube channel. But here I am comparing the new tire compared to the stock tire, and you can see it's much wider and the tread is much thicker with each groove and much more aggressive. I can't wait to get these on and test them out. Next, I'll go up and check out the front as well. This shows a good size difference between the front tires of how much wider the new one is and how much more aggressive the tread is. I can't wait to get these on and give them a test. I think I should get a lot more front end grip, obviously, and maybe even a little more steering feel. Again, I apologize to those listening and not viewing this podcast. Again, you can go to AutoGuide.com's YouTube page to see, but the last comparison I'm making is between the front and rear tires. So not only is the rear tire obviously wider, but the way the Genesis Coupe came, it's a little staggered, and you can see it's actually a little bit taller overall as well. That's because it's a 275/35 while the front is a 245/35. Okay, enough talk about the tires. Let's see how they look on the car, and more importantly, how they feel behind the wheel. Okay, the tires are now on, and I gotta say, I love the look, the width, everything about the tires. If you look at the rear here, compared to what it used to be, it's just so wide, and it's pushed out, and it's got a great sort of stance and presence now. From the back down low, it just looks so nice. Those watching the video will be able to see. Those listening, I'm trying to describe as best I can, and I will have up front, it's a similar story. I really like the way the wheel fits with the tire. The tire's right at the edge. I don't like the stretch look at all, so this is nice that it's sort of a flush mount to the wheel. I like the width, and from the front down low, it looks great, just like the back. These are a little narrower up front, as is the case with all Genesis coupes, but overall, I really like the way they look. But more importantly, let's see how they grip on an on-ramp. Got a nice one right here. I can feel everything the car is doing. It is great. I can feel the front and the back kind of wagging back and forth, controlling where they're going. And there's so much grip, I'm sure, but it's not just the grip, it's the confidence and the feeling. I can definitely feel sort of what the tires are doing and where the limit's going to be. I'm nowhere near the limit, which I don't want to be on public roads, but it starts to give you a little warning saying, hey, you're kind of getting there, just slow down a little. So much grip, so responsive. Genesis coupe steering isn't that great, and this has improved it because I think it's just there's more weight and more heft, so it's making the steering work harder, and I can feel a bit more in return. So hey, I'll take it. Now, as I said in the wheel review, this tire wheel combination doesn't have any sort of penalty in ride quality. I was expecting when you get the shorter sidewall, the wider tire, the larger wheel, it would get a little rougher, a little bumpier, but no, it drives very smooth. If anything, I think it's a little better because these tires are new, and I also find the car tracks straight much better, especially at freeway speeds. It was probably more 14-year-old wheels with old tires that were causing an issue before, but with these ones at freeway, I'm just going straight. It's just, there's no need to keep correcting like I had to before. So that's the benefit of getting new wheels and tires alone. So one final thing about the tires before we move on. I haven't had a track to really autocross or track it yet, just taking some corners pretty quick. And the Genesis, anyone who's owned one, especially a low model one like mine without the LSD, it is so prone to spinning the inside rear wheel at like any throttle at any angle, and this is now letting you kind of power through. So yeah, I look forward to trying it some more. All right, on to the news of the week. The first story is sad. The Volkswagen ID7 has been postponed in North America for who knows how long, indefinitely at this point. Hopefully we do get it at some point, because I was really looking forward to it. We love the Ioniq 6. It'd be cool if there's a competitor to it, but it's in Europe still, but not here.
Yep. I went to the preview event just over a year ago in New York, and yeah, it's what I would like out of an EV, because it's a larger sedan, but it's super comfortable and very good for efficiency, and it's pretty handsome in that modern VW styling way, and it gives people who want an EV at VW an option other than ID4 and the upcoming Buzz. It made a lot of sense. But also it makes a lot of sense to delay it because, boy, our entire continent loves SUVs.
Yeah. Hopefully we didn't give it the preview curse like when we previewed the Mazda 2 and it never ended up showing up. Hopefully it still comes at some point. All right, on to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Lamborghini showed off its new V8 engine, which will be in its new yet unnamed supercar, although we think we've maybe uncovered the name before. And it's turbo, it's hybrid, and it's going to rev to 10,000 RPM. It's like Lamborghini just sat in a room with a checklist and said, okay, let's do this. And they are very adamant this is an in-house V8. This isn't something they've borrowed from Porsche or Audi. This is something they've made, which is cool, and which makes me hope maybe it'll be reverse. It'll start showing up in some other products, and they can like sort of like how Alpha had Ferrari bits. You can be like, oh, that's the Lambo engine in my whatever, in my SQR 4368, whatever, something.
My Panamera. Yeah, I as someone who hasn't driven a Lamborghini, unfortunately, not yet. Hi, Lamborghini, I'm here. But their cars, growing up, their cars were nuts, right? That was always the differentiating factor from a Lamborghini to a Ferrari. Like it probably wasn't faster, but it looked bonkers, and that was always the fun thing.
Bonkers.
Yeah, and so like now they seem like they're very, very good at what they do on the track, but they are a little more restrained in their styling. I say relatively, but this sounds yeah, relatively, but this sounds like incredible. When I read this, because I was on a trip this week, I was like, oh, 10,000 RPM. Cool. They're sticking with naturally aspirated engines. And then I saw, oh, it's also turbocharged. So you're going to end up with so you're going to end up with a ton of torque, but also it'll rev higher than anything else on the market not named Valkyrie.
Yeah, it's making over 800 horsepower, they said. And like you said, if done right, and I'm sure this is exactly how they're doing it, they are going to have the hybrid produce ridiculous low-end torque, which allows them then to have the turbo make really high-end power. You don't have to tune the turbo to make a nice broad range. So it's going to kind of be like what Volvo did with the supercharged, turbocharged engines back in the day. It's going to just be this natural, yeah. And how you're talking about the looks and the sound. Yeah, Ferraris, like, they looked stylish and they made this high-pitched, like, race car sophisticated noise, and Lamborghinis were just like flashy, and their engines were just like loud, like sounded great, but just in your face. And I talked to Andrea a couple weeks ago about the SE, and I brought up the question about noise, and he kind of hinted that it's going to still be there and, wait for things to come. So I guess he knew that this was about to come. So I'm sure there will be a sound teaser before we know the car, but
hopefully
looking forward to it.
Before we switch to the next item, I just want to point out that this is probably the first time that we've had a Volvo versus Lamborghini comparison mentioned. That's all.
So we need to experience the V10 before
we do.
This comes.
Yeah.
Speaking of fast cars, the Volkswagen GTI Clubsport is going to be designed to take on the Civic Type R. So that's interesting because they're very different, but it's kind of cool that Volkswagen's going to go full performance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that, someone maybe listening will correct me on this one, but I am reasonably sure that Volkswagen has done a Clubsport before in Europe for the GTI. They've taken the GTI a little higher, but here, it's always been very distinct between GTI and R. So as someone who really enjoys high performance front drive cars, this sounds like a blast. Like, and we know that engine is good for it because the R exists. So tuning up the power, and then also adding improved handling and whatever else is hiding underneath this. Yeah, I'm game.
Yeah, this is a Volkswagen Porsche comparison, which is a little more reasonable. It sounds like they're doing what Porsche's always done, where not always, but what they used to do, where they basically take the turbo, take out the front wheel drive part of it, and then you have a GT2. So that Golf R is very front wheel drive biased, and it's all wheel drive system until there's slips. So yeah, it's not unreasonable that they just kind of get rid of those mechanics, but they can still have maybe over 300 horsepower to the front wheels, and there you go. So yeah, it's kind of cool. It'd be cool. We have two options. It'll be interesting to see how it works.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and another crazy car, the Mercedes-AMG Pure Speed debuts. I love the name Pure Speed. It's like Ferrari.
Yeah,
it's like the Chevy Go Faster.
Yeah, like we needed more speed from what is, from the looks of it, a slightly rebodied GT.
Not more speed. It's just pure. It's not diluted. It's not. It's not.
Yes.
Not recycled speed. It's pure speed. But yeah, it looks great, and like I said, it's probably it is like a Coachwork one-off. But hey, it's cool. Or like Aston
250 off.
Yeah, Aston, Ferrari, like they've all been doing it for years, so why not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a tried and true tradition. So I mean, yeah, we'll never see one,
Yeah,
neat.
that's true. All right. Well, we're going to hear from our sponsor. And then when we come back, we're going to have Calvin Kim from Porsche USA join us and talk about the Macan EV. We will talk to you soon. eBay Motors is here for the ride. Okay, everyone, let's take a minute and talk about the one that got away. The vehicle you once owned and for whatever reason had to get rid of, and to this day fully regret ever doing so. For me, it's my Subaru SVX. It was a 1997 model, which was one of the last years it was ever sold here. It was black on the outside and it had the beige leather and suede interior. It was in amazing condition for its age because it was just a one-owner vehicle. The interior was near flawless. The paint was pretty good considering it was about a 20-year-old car when I got it. I just loved everything about it. I loved the quirkiness because I love oddball cars. I love the window within the window, the power button on the gear shifter, the way the dash was laid out and you could hide the radio behind the fake wood panel. The flat six was just so smooth and it was all-wheel drive, and although it wasn't overly quick, it still had enough power. The problem was, within a year of buying that car, I ended up selling it because I got a great deal on another vehicle. And to this day, I regret doing so. Part of the reason I sold it was, although it was in great shape, it wasn't perfect and there were things that needed to be fixed, like the air conditioner, reservoir, some bearings, and other bits. And back then there was no eBay guaranteed fit program, so finding parts for such a rare 20-year-old car was not easy. Luckily, I sold it to someone who not only cared for it, but took the time to fix it up, and every once in a while I do get to still see it, and I still regret ever getting rid of it. I am constantly online looking for a new SVX because now I have a system that I can find parts for it, but I haven't come across one that's both in the right condition and the right price range. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber and not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Okay, welcome back. This week we have a very special guest. If you could just introduce yourself and what you do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Calvin Kim. I'm the product spokesperson. I'm one of the product spokespersons at Porsche Cars North America. Specifically, I represent the four-door model line. So that's Cayenne, Macan, Panamera, and Taycan. I also dabble on technology like infotainment and e-fuels and things like that. So yeah, I keep busy.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Can't you just pass them off to your colleague?
We run a tight ship over here, and so lean and mean, as we say.
Oh, we know that feeling. Anyway,
Yeah.
moving on. So we have a couple questions and maybe some follow-up comments. I mean, I think the biggest one that I know you've probably answered 100 times, but we'll get you to do it again. Why was the Macan chosen as the second all-electric Porsche model?
I mean, thankfully that's an easy one. I mean, if you look at the landscape on what types of cars people are buying, most interested in buying, and yeah, compact crossovers are very popular. And of course, when the Macan ICE car, the original Macan launched, that was the same question. Why is Porsche even making a compact crossover? And from our perspective, we liked the platform, we liked the size, the everyday usability. That's an important topic for us. But of course, we couldn't just take something that was already existing, just run it like that. We had to make it our own. And the Macan has been, I don't think anyone denies it. It's been a very successful car for us, going on over 10 years now. And the Macan nameplate is strong enough. People know what it is. It's an aspirational product for some people. It's the first car for other people. It's the primary car for others. And it combines kind of the best attributes in an easily digestible format. You get all the sportiness, you get the usability, and you can customize it however way you want. And when we were thinking about after the Taycan, what should be the next EV, it made a lot of sense to go with user-oriented vehicle next, and that being the Macan.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and like you said, like everyone wants in on the compact SUV game. a slightly related question then, because we're talking about what is a very popular segment. What do you kind of expect the take rate to be for Macan Electric versus the ICE model?
Honestly, we haven't really penciled it out. We're supply constrained for both cars at the moment. So, honestly, it's whatever we can get is what we'll sell that. We anticipate initially, the first year or so will be where the supply constraints are going to be the hardest. And so we won't have a very clear, honest picture of the take rates until probably towards the end of year 2 after the car comes out. Having said that, in a way, we see that as a good thing. The march towards electrification, needs its own time to gestate and grow. And I think that's the time that people need to, stop by the dealership, maybe take one for test drive, look at the brochure, look at the website, and understand kind of how it works. Maybe talk to owners, and then they can put in their order. And by the time maybe someone that's reluctant but interested is ready to pull the trigger on one, we'll have supply, everything sorted out.
Mm-hmm. And it's such a, I realized too, asking that question, that it's such a different thing for each market, right? Like Europe, a take rate is going to be vastly different than here because,
Right.
well,
they don't get the ICE Macan anymore. So for them, it's 100%. But ultimately, there'll be some natural balance point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anything that's brand new, you get a huge interest. So you're going to have that initial sort of surge of people that have just been waiting for this, like Kyle and I, to drive it. Kyle's actually gotten to drive the Taycan many times, and I never have. I wasn't back in this industry when it launched, so I just missed it. I did the Panamera PHEV and the Cayenne PHEV, but never those. So yeah, our freelance contributor, Lee Bailey, went on the first drive of it, and basically he went on about how even though it's heavier and drives differently in power delivery, it's still quite fun and feels like a Porsche. So when your team's designing it, is it sort of they made the Macan EV and now we got to tune it so it's like a Porsche? Or is it sort of like this is the only way you can make it an EV to retain the Porsche feel to it?
I mean, little a, little a B. There's certain aspects, the Macan is based on a group platform called PPE. But you don't have to take the whole package, right? You can mix and match and customize some of the components to suit your application. And for us, that involved suspension calibration, the rear subframe, how the rear motor is the other way. It's behind the rear axle to improve weight distribution, a little bit more weight in the back. That's a very Porsche thing to do.
I was going to say it's a very Porsche move.
Yeah, and it gives room in front of that drivetrain module for the rear axle steering rack. To again, that's a very Porsche thing to do, because now basically every single one of our cars, except for the ICE Macan and the mid-engines, now are all available. There's some variant available with rear axle steering. That way you can combine the best attributes of high speed, highway stability, and a lot of agility when you're out in the mountains. In fact, that's where I was in the morning, and it's, even in a regular Cayenne S, if that's the only option you have, it's like, okay, this thing still hauls and it still tips in nice. It still is super stable on the highway going certainly within the speed limit, of course.
Always.
Yeah. Everything within the letter of the law. It's interesting you brought up the rear wheel steering, because it's a concept that's been around for like decades, but I really feel right now it's kind of coming of age. I've driven many EVs and even some hybrids and gas cars with the rear steering, and it seems like the formula's been nailed now, and I guess it's becoming easier to integrate, or maybe more affordable. I don't know what it is, but it worked in the 80s and 90s, but just seems now like it makes such a difference, especially in an EV. Like, I can't believe the turning radius you can get at some places. Yeah,
I mean, there's so many different reasons why rear axle steering is now getting popular. I mean, I don't know if there's any one specific one that kind of tipped the landslide, so to speak. But the fact that all the computers in the cars, I know a lot of people, enthusiasts, complain about computers. I'm an enthusiast and I complain about computers, but at the same time, I also understand how awesome they are, and when they're integrated correctly and programmed, and they're all talking to each other, all like a big happy family, you get rear axle steering. I mean, basically the speeds of the processing and the network in the car is fast enough where you can add that component, and the reaction is fast enough, so now it's completely seamless.
Nice. Yeah, it out of the numerous vehicles that we drew in from Porsche with rear steer. Yeah, it definitely feels natural, which is a fun thing to say about it. But yeah, it's seamless. Staying on that subject ish, because a lot of the higher trims end up with rear steer. I know people love asking this. With 630 horsepower and the turbo name, would you say that the Macan EV Turbo is now the flagship of the entire Macan range?
100%. 100%. The car is crazy, and I mean that in a good way. It's the fact that you can just put it in normal mode and honestly not really know that it's got that much power. But when you put in Sport Plus or you hammer down on the throttle, I remember when we did the technology program in Leipzig, which is in the northern part of Germany, where our second factory is. That's where the Macan will be made. They have a Porsche Experience Center with their own little track and everything. And there's some elevation changes, and the development drivers were giving media that were in attendance taxi rides on the track, and they were hucking this thing like a rally car. And that's the kind of thing that we're hoping happens again with this second generation Macan. When the first generation Macan came out, everyone's perception of what a luxury compact crossover should be was very much towards one direction. And then we showed up with our back then Macan Turbo and Macan S, and upended that. Yeah, it had leather interior and you could customize all the colors, but ultimately the important thing for us is it had to haul. It had to, sport mode, Sport Plus, traction control off, and get the back end out. And that was like the first compact crossover that could really do that. And now we have a lot of other brands that have understood compact crossovers don't have to be a penalty box. You can have your cake and eat it too. The reduced weight and wheelbase and ride height mean that you're making so many less compromises than a full-size SUV that it's worth porting over some of the dynamics engineering that you've done on a hatchback or a sedan or a sports car into that compact crossover platform to make it haul. And yeah, like you said, we did that. We did the same. We went in to the second gen Macan, the electric Macan, with that same vision, and the Macan Turbo definitely takes that role and literally launch controls off with it.
It seems that way. And of course, now you talking about all that and comparing it to a rally car and kind of hucking it in. Now I'm just thinking about the idea of a Dakar-inspired Macan EV, and my brain is going wild. So
it's all the fizz, man.
Yeah. It's funny how you're saying about how you just hit the accelerator and it goes. I believe the official Porsche quote 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds, which I know you'll never say, but we all know is conservative. They always seem to outdo their numbers. And this is a bit of a separate rant, but I'm a firm believer, having driven a lot of vehicles. Once you hit that 3 seconds 0 to 60, it doesn't really matter how much faster you go. I mean, yeah, like a professional race car driver, maybe some of us more experienced media folk, or someone who just claims they can. You don't feel the difference. You take a regular person out and 3 seconds feels just as fast as 2, because your brain can't comprehend how fast you're going. And then if the rest of the car turns and stops, that's a great bonus.
I'm right there with you. For me, once you can feel your eyeballs squish, that's fine. I'm not greedy. I don't need any more than that.
Yeah, I just had a competitor's vehicle over the holidays, and I took a lot of family, nieces, nephews, parents, sisters, brothers, and they all were like it discombobulated them how fast it could go. And I was like, yeah, I think we've kind of hit the number. Yeah, it's fun to chase. Like I can do 1.9 or 2, but
I mean, the important thing for us is to make a well-rounded car. So yeah, of course, acceleration is important. But Kyle, as you mentioned, it also needs to turn and stop, and and in this case for an EV, it also needs to be able to charge effectively. And so I think they put a lot of effort into that. Could they have made the car accelerate faster? I'm sure they could, but to your point, Mike, once it's at a 3, it kind of let's turn our attention to the other attributes that would make an excellent vehicle.
Yeah, and there's something about EVs. I know they've been some torque, but it really disorientates you more. And I think maybe it's the lack of sounding engagement of the transmission, because I've been in Turbo S's that are faster, and they still really throw you back, but you don't feel this weird sort of sensation. It's kind of like if you're in VR and you think you're falling, but you don't feel it. It's like this, your brain's not like, why am I going so fast?
Well, it's the way that the power is delivered. It's the impulse. In a normal gas car, it starts off, even with launch control, yeah, you'll get a quick hit just to, get the car off the line. But as kind of physics takes over, your rate of acceleration kind of drops a little bit before it catches back up again. Especially in a turbocharged car, as the turbos are spooling up, the engine's getting into its rev range and everything. But you don't have that with an electric car. You're always in the power band, and so once you get out of the launch box, you just have this impulse that doesn't stop. It just stays up there, and that's weird because you never get that opportunity to blink, to recover even for a split second, to go, oh, okay, there's no like you mentioned, a shift. There's no shift, so you don't really have that, like, okay, I am continuing to accelerate. You just see the world kind of bend behind you. And again, like I mentioned earlier, any of our top model electric cars, and again, I know we're not the only ones, on many other manufacturers' top model electric cars, when you get that eyeball squish, it's like, okay, yep, it's crazy. and it stays there for multiple seconds.
It's like those roller coasters that get launched as opposed to climbing the hill. It's just you're back and you just keep going. So you've mentioned your competitors a couple times, and that's actually a question I have. You talked about how you kind of brought it the Macan initially, and then they kind of realized and caught up. Do you see any main competitors for the Macan Electric, or is it sort of in a class of its own currently?
No, I mean, honestly, I don't mean to wave the PR flag here, but here's the reality of it. If you talk to people, hand raisers, and people that are interested in the car, the number one competitor for the Macan is the Macan, the ICE Macan. The Macan being very popular means there are a lot of people that know what that car is, and now they're going to vote with their pocketbook which one they like more, right? I mean, you go to a Porsche dealership, I mean, not at the moment, but just in a few months when the Macan starts making deliveries, you'll look at two, and they're very different value propositions. They're very different cars, and you're going to have to make a decision which one you want. Some people are going to come in and only want one or the other, but realistically, ultimately, that's the truth, is the Macan is our competition. Sorry, my camera's about to fall.
That's okay. So I think you just lined up a future comparison for us. A feature comparison of Macan versus Macan, and which one's right for you. Because you're right, different customers will need different things, and maybe they just don't know which one they want yet.
I would say right now is probably where there's the most overlap, because no one knows how the electric Macan is going to be. A lot of people are going to come from other EVs, because obviously, if you already are an EV buyer, buying another EV is very easy, versus the inertia you have to overcome to go from an ICE, if you're a predominantly ICE family, for example, to get your first EV. But at the same time, let's say you've got a first gen Macan from 2015, it's about time to get into another Macan, so we're curious.
Maybe we'll get some Cayenne e-hybrid conversions that just want the next most green thing. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we anticipate some of that too. Our customers are very loyal. We have good retention, and they got rid of their Cayenne because they don't want to port. No, they got rid of their Cayenne because they want a new 911 or Panamera or something else. So it's a very different type of value proposition.
Porsche owners loyal? You don't say. Well, that's all the questions we have for you. You answered them great. It was very it was a fun conversation, very informative. We will definitely have you on again down the road.
Yeah,
back.
I'm always down to talk shop, cars, whatever. This year is crazy. A lot of new cars coming out. Next year is when they'll actually start hitting the road. End of the year towards next year is when they'll actually start hitting the roads. So yeah, we'll be keeping you guys busy. Yeah,
there's a certain iconic name that I can't remember that's getting a hybrid later.
Oh yeah,
that's weird. That is
all the rage. That system should be pretty awesome.
I can imagine. So anyway, we'll talk to you later, and thanks a lot for coming.
Cheers, guys. Till next time.
Thanks, Calvin.
All right, it's always great talking to Calvin. A lot of great information there. Now we're going to switch to another guest. We have Colin Wood back on to talk F1.
Hello.
So what do you got for us this week?
It's been an interesting week. I'm obsessed with the Andretti Cadillac drama. So on the positive side, there was this great story earlier in the week that they had hired Pat Simmons, who most people don't follow the nitty gritty bits of the industry. So he's hired on as a consultant. What's important is that he is the former chief technical officer of Formula One. So he's the one that kind of makes all the rules in a sense. So having him on board is certainly a big sort of push forward. The flip side of that is some very juicy news came out recently. Mario Andretti said that he, in a conversation with the CEO of Liberty Media, right, who is basically blocking them from joining Formula One, apparently said that he will do everything in his power to make sure that Andretti doesn't get into F1.
Oh, wow.
So that's there must be some personal beef or something going on.
Got me some bad blood there to say that.
Yeah. And it was weird. The exact quote sort of said it's more specific to Michael Andretti. He sort of says something like he said to Mario something about how, like, not having Michael in Formula One or something. It's like, because Michael's actually the one running the team. Mario's, he's past doing those things. So, there's something going on, but it could certainly heat up. Or maybe if this gets hauled in front of the regulators in the States, it could mean they got to, move somebody out at Liberty Media. Who knows? Could get spicy.
Yeah, I mean, it still just sounds to me like they had a new idea and they approached it in a new way, and F1's like, no, we can't have you do things outside of the norm. That doesn't go. So now, like, they're mad. It's like a spite, like, you tried to get into the wrong way, so we're never gonna let you in. It's just dumb. It's like they don't want money. It's like, no, we don't want your money and your revenues. Sorry. Yeah,
it's like the Ferrari way of doing things, right? It's like, it's the old boys club, and you've got to go through the hazing ritual or nothing, right? It's our way or no way at all.
So yeah, that's interesting. And then they have Monaco this week. Hey, Lando almost did it again last week. I think Max was just holding it a little bit at the end, but he still had to, which does not happen to him. So
I think Max had to give it everything to make it work. Like he was out. He was really driving the wheels off that thing to make sure he stayed ahead. And again, it's the whole, Lando could have caught him. Passing's a harder thing, right? But I think we saw actually that Lando caught up for a while, and then when Max really gave it full beans, it became like the gap sort of lessened, and I think Lando started to run out of tires as well, right? So it was like, okay, you got to kind of keep that distance. But I don't know if you've been following by the time this goes live, the Monaco race will already be over, but the Red Bulls are not doing so hot in free practice so far. The free practice one, Verstappen was 11th. He's only 5th in free practice too. So they're not looking hooked up. We'll see. Yeah,
it's almost like it's not getting worse. It's just everyone keeps putting improvements on their car and seem to be getting better, especially McLaren. They seem to have nailed something. Like you said, I'm sure Max gave it all, but it sort of did what Lewis used to do. It was like, okay, I have 6 seconds to play with, and I'll, save what I can on my tires. When he gets to a second and a half, now I'm going to push again. And I think it was just the same time Lando ran out of tires because his time slowed down and Max has picked up a bit. But who knows, another lap or two, or if he had started a lap or two later, he could keep pushing. Who knows what would happen? But Monaco is a very different beast. So Red Bull always seems to have a power advantage, and that doesn't really matter much in Monaco.
Yeah, you're right. And so actually, I think we're seeing that in those free practice sessions that Red Bull's not up there. Leclerc is doing good, but the fastest guy in FP1 was actually Hamilton, and I thought that's a bit of an anomaly. He's second fastest in FP2. So could this be the Hamilton actually back on top? I don't know. I feel like it's going to end up being somewhat of a surprise, maybe like a Sainz or someone. Who knows? But
I mean, on the flip side of what I said earlier, Mercedes' biggest complaint always seems to be that they have too much downforce and not enough power, straight line speed. But again, that's not a big deal. So yeah, it'd be interesting. Who knows? I know with this race, it's all about the qualifying, so that'll be a big deal.
I was going to say that for anybody who is watching this show and who is not a big F1 fan, but would maybe watch Monaco because it's fun and sexy and whatever, the race itself can often be a bit of a bore. The qualifying is where it's at. So tune in for qualifying. Like last year's was epic. It was actually, I remember Ocon was fastest, and then which was totally random. And then Alonso had it, and we all thought, no way anybody could top Alonso because Verstappen was actually behind. But then Verstappen got it at the very last second, and it was some exceptional laps. And I think also because of that, people know basically it's so hard to pass, so they will give it their all to be at the front in qualifying, which means you will see crashes in qualifying. There will be some chaos. So
I was going to say, it's such a tight course and there's zero runoff space. There's always a crash, which also can throw such a wrench in qualifying. Because if in FP1, everyone's just put a safe lap but not really pushed it, and then someone red flags or yellows it and you don't get another lap in, you can get caught out. So it's like every lap you have to go because you never know when it's going to stop. And then there's the weather.
Yeah.
Weather in Monaco likes to change every 5 minutes, so
It
that
does.
should be interesting.
It does, and there's always these. We've seen it in the past where some drivers will crash on purpose to make sure that no one can be best their time. Right?
No one would do that.
That's happened multiple times for multiple drivers. So we'll see if it happens again this year. It'll be juicy. So
well, everything we're saying will be old, so people will be like, "Oh, you're right," or "You guys were totally wrong."
I wouldn't be surprised if we're right on that. On the on somebody putting some shenanigans together. So. Maybe a juicy last bit of information on the whole driver market, which is always funny. So far this year, we've seen everybody sign where we kind of thought they'd sign, and it's been boring. But as it kind of gets down towards the end of the seats that are left, I think we'll see some weird movings around. So I saw rumors this week of basically everybody potentially going to Haas, Bottas, Tsunoda, Ocon. I'm like, really? The most crazy rumor I heard was, and apparently this is in like late state negotiations, which I find it very hard to believe, is that Carlos Sainz would go to Williams. I was like, really? That seems pretty strange.
But it is interesting. But remember last week or 2 weeks ago when we were talking about Albon signing long-term there, I said they got to be doing something. So maybe there's something we don't know, that maybe the 26 car, like they've just given up because they're so bad right now and they're going all in with that, or... Yeah, I mean, maybe they just think they need a better lineup. I don't know.
There's, I think part of the rumor too is around, and what could make sense is around Sainz is, it would be a short-term contract, because Sainz is this whole, he's playing off the teams against each other because he's trying to get in the best spot. He obviously would love to go to Red Bull right now, but Red Bull is not so sure that they take him. And then there's this apparently he has an open offer from Audi to join, but that won't be until later. So he could basically, rather than not know where to go, right? He could sign at Williams, run that out for a year, then go to Audi. But if that also seems strange, why not just sign with Audi like right away? Like the Sauber team will, I'm sure they'd take him over either of their current drivers if they could.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do bad next year, like what's the difference between Williams and Sauber? But I mean, Williams is making some inroads, at least with Albon. He's been a little more competitive up there than in the past. So who knows? Maybe they're on the cusp of something, but maybe they just want a name behind their car.
It could be, yeah. Sponsorship dollars, et cetera, right? Helps make the team. But again, maybe there's the whole Williams is tied to Mercedes, and there's an in there, and maybe Williams knows that Mercedes has a good engine coming for future regulations. Who knows?
It could be just like other professional sports where you see a star sign somewhere and you're like, that team's not competitive at all. Why are you signing there? And they're getting a boatload of money, and they're in a team with no expectations and a small market, so they can just play and take it easy. So maybe that's what he's thinking too. Take a year just to, no one expects anything, whereas Ferrari, it's like every race he's expected to win. So
they are. So we'll see if that holds true. People can watch the prediction meter for the Monaco race. I'm excited. I'll be watching it all intently.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, thanks for this. Next week, I won't probably be on the show, so we'll have you on maybe with Kyle, or we'll take a week off, but we'll definitely be back in 2 weeks.
Sounds great. Take care.
All right. See ya. Okay, before we go, we are going to do our usual look ahead. So I'm actually driving the Gladiator Mojave in a forest green with big chunky wheels and cool stickers. I have it just for a couple days, but I have to do some actual truck things with it. So I'm excited. And it's also beautiful weather now, so I'll try to take at least the T-tops off, maybe the whole roof. But yeah, it's unlike anything on the road, for better or worse, but it's distinct.
Yeah. And for me, I'm actually not in a press car for the weekend, which is a nice little break. But talking about taking the roof off, I will be getting into the new Mustang EcoBoost convertible starting next week, or when people start listening to this podcast. And that will be a nice little experience, because honestly, like I think a Mustang needs to be a convertible outside of the Dark Horse, because it's track oriented. yeah, I want a convertible. I want to enjoy the sun and with a GT, the soundtrack, but I'm very curious to see what it's like to live with the EcoBoost for a week. And then in addition to that, there will also be a slightly different model, the M3 CS we'll have for a week, which is going to be a bright neon green, I'm pretty sure, and a much different idea of a car. It's quick, it's all-wheel drive, it's automatic, and it is going to be a test to live with.
Yeah, poor you, having to drive a convertible pony car and a super M3 at the same time. You're just be out on the road pretty much all week.
Yeah.
The Mustang was supposed to be mine, but I gave it up because I leave Tuesday to head to Germany for the 24 Hours of Nürburgring, and I am super pumped. I can't wait. I'll be reporting all week there as much as I can. Social posts, whatever I can get out of there. I think there's going to be some other hopeful surprises I get while I'm there. So yeah, check back on our socials and AutoGuide for some info, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't probably be on the podcast next week because I'll be in a very different time zone. It might work, it might not. We'll have to tune in next week and see who Kyle's talking with.
Yeah, it might be Mike in a forest. It might not be.
Yeah, just me hiding somewhere underneath some scaffolding or something.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in again. This has been the Auto Guide Show brought to you by eBay Motors. And some of us will see you next week.
So long.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a driveway entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.